Hey guys, I'm working through a bunch of old games because I'm building up this tactics course for your should be coming out in the next few months. So I'm working through all like 10,000 games that I've played on chess.com in the past. Because what I figure is, I've looked around for tactics courses for chess, yeah, and some of them like. I found one by King Crusher, who's really, really smart analyst, commentator. But you go in, and I looked at the first example of that tactics course, and it's like one of these like 6-move deep puzzles, and that's great if you're a 1700 player and you're wanting to break 2000 and whatever, and get like a master title, this, that, and the other. Yeah, you need that stuff. But if you're sub 1000, if you're sub 1500 like me, you don't need that. You don't need that. It's like going into a gym, right, when you're for the first time and trying to stack 150 kilos or 300 pounds on the bench press, right? You can't even lift it. You're going to hurt yourself trying. And that's the problem with a lot of this stuff that's out there. It's just, it's tactics within tactics, and it's really, really deep. So what I'm wanting to do is I'm wanting to use the real life games that I've played, over 10,000 of them on chess.com, and I'm working through these games. I'm analysing and categorising the different types of tactics that we find. So tactics being short-term manoeuvres that you can implement in order to give yourself an advantage over your opponent. Okay, so the advantage might be material, it might be space, it might be checkmate, win the game, or all kinds of things, or prevent your opponent from castling, right? Loads and loads of different things. So I'm working through this, and I've just come across this game that I played in, I think, June 2019. Okay, and I'm rated just over 1300 at this point. My opponent's rated over 100 points higher than me, and from Cambodia, rated 1423. And this is just a really, really fun game, and it's stacked with interesting tactics. So let me just take you through it. Sit back, press pause, get yourself a cuppa if you need to, because this is quite enjoyable. So I've got the black pieces. My opponent starts with e4, e5, and we have the Vienna, knight to c3. Okay, he doesn't play the Vienna gambit. He plays h3, okay, just on the slow side. So I play d5. It's defended by knight and queen. 2 attackers, 2 defenders. Exchange is an option, so we exchange. We don't exchange the knight, and now we have knight to e2. Now, one issue with this is that white started the game by playing e4, and the beauty of that is that, or one of the benefits is, it opens up diagonals for the queen and the light squared bishop to come out into the board. Now, putting the knight there on e2, well, it's adding a second defence to this knight, but that knight's already defended by a couple of pawns. He's just blocked in his bishop and his queen, so fair play. And now I bring out my bishop, adding more pressure to that knight on c3. So he moves the knight back onto e4. f5 kicks the knight, moves the knight back, now captures and pawn captures, because the thing is, if he captured with his knight anyway, I could still have captured and forced one of the pawns to move. So he thinks, well, might as well capture with the pawn and leave my knight on this excellent square on e2 where it's blocking in my queen and my light squared bishop. So like you're thinking. Okay, and now for some strange reason known only to myself 2 years ago, I decided to trade my bishop for a pawn. And here, one of the many tactics that we're looking at in the course is when your opponent captures a piece, if you've got options to recapture, consider your options, right? Choose the right piece to recapture with, and here, what do you think white does? Yeah? Clearly he should just recapture with the knight on e7, but he's so in love with the fact that this knight's there blocking in his development that he decides instead to capture with a pawn, because he thinks that, surely 2 pawn islands is better than one, and everybody loves doubled and isolated pawns. So I now castle. So I am down a couple of points because I've just given up my bishop for this. And I guess we both just missed the fact that he could simply have recaptured with his knight. But there you go. That's what you get. You know, we are intermediate players. We're not good players. All right. So now we have a bishop to b2. It's defending that pawn again, I guess. I push now f4, and we have an exchange of queens. So what White needs to be thinking about at this point is completing development. So in terms of the way that the game unfolds, I'm still behind. I've still got 2 minor pieces on the back rank, but I've castled my king, and it's got to some element of safety. White still has to castle his king, which he could actually do queenside as well if he wants to, and put his rook straight on there, but he obviously can't pass through there right now because I've got my rook on the d file. But kingside looks great as well. He just has to move this knight. Problem is that this knight on a light square there is only looking at dark squares. So he can't go there because pawn takes. He can't go there because pawn takes. He can't go there because pawn takes. He can't go there because he's got his own piece on it. So this knight is really stuck in White's throat at this point in time. So White now plays f3 for reasons best known to him, because it's doing nothing to get this bishop out. I mean, look, even if he were to just swing his knight round back here or something, just get this stupid knight out of the way. f3 is played. Bishop f5, attacking a loose pawn here. Rook comes across to defend the loose pawn, and now I engage my final minor piece. So now I have actually completed development. White is still a few moves away, has to move this stupid bishop, has to move the stupid knight to get the stupid bishop out of the way so that he can at least castle and get to some safety. Okay, so now finally the knight decides to move and goes all the way back to where it bloody came from on g1. So this is not a textbook game by any means. So all right, now my knight swings back around to b6. We have g4 to kick the bishop, but this is a mistake because he's forgotten about the en passant rule. Okay, that would have been an okay move, but I could simply drop it back to g6. But now, right, you've got a king in the middle of the board. So number one objective needs to be to get the king to safety, right? And this is not the way to do it. Even if I didn't capture, yeah, I just drop my bishop back and look, the king's in all this space. It's not right. This is poor. Anyway, but I capture en passant, and now we have a scattering of pawns around. 4 of his pieces are still on the back rank. He's only got one thing developed, and it's behind a pawn. So it's really poor. This is, a bad 1400 game. But then, he's playing somebody 110 points lower rated than him, and sometimes it's hard to do that. Anyway, so knight comes into c4. Obviously, I'm looking at this bishop. Bishop can't even go there. The only way it can move would be to go back to a1, or he could defend with the rook. What does he decide to do? Bishop all the way back to a1. And now knight coming in here. Now look at this. I'm hitting this bishop that's undefended. I'm also adding a second attacker to the pawn on c2, and if I do that, I've got a fork on the king and the bishop. This is just going all horribly wrong. Okay, so yeah, so I come in here hitting the bishop. Bishop goes back to f2, and now g2. And this is just terrible, really. So I'm attacking the bishop. There's a fork on the bishop and the rook. What's he going to do? He captures the pawn, probably the best move. Now knight takes bishop with check. Now the king has to move, right? So what now for this king? This is nice, nice move. This is on the tactics course, we call this an X-ray defense. I don't know if it has a proper name, but basically the king's attacking the knight. Yeah. So I put in a major piece here. This can work with a bishop or a rook or a queen. So I'm attacking the piece, but I'm thereby, when the piece moves, I'm defending the piece behind it that it was attacking in the first place. Now what's interesting here is the king can't go here because of the rook, but it also can't go there or there to attack the rook because the knight is guarding those two squares. So what he does is now knight to e2. Now what would you play in this position? So the move that I find is knight to f4. Okay, so this knight, you've got to be careful sometimes with breaking a check or breaking an attack by interposing a piece, because what you're effectively saying you're doing is I'm pinning my own piece. All right. Now, if you're going to do that, you have to say to yourself, is it possible for my opponent then to attack this pinned piece that I've voluntarily pinned myself? I think, I don't know, here, I mean, there are options. The king can simply move away, for sure, all right? But, you know, he's only 1 point down in material. All he has to do is actually activate his pieces, you know? But anyway, so we're attacking the pinned knight. Rook comes across to defend the pinned knight, and now I grab a pawn with check. Okay, the king is now able to come here and attack the rook if he wants. He does indeed, and I simply defend the rook with the other rook. So, you know, any time going over this, there's a lot about this in the course, responding to attacks. Okay, the rook is under attack here. You've always, or nearly always, got options when it comes to attacks. You can counter-attack. You can evade the attack by moving the attacked piece. You can defend the attack pieces, which is what I'm doing here. And what's good about this is that I'm doing it while developing my final rook as well. So I'm centralizing the rook. I've got great control now over the d-file, and it's all looking a bit horrible for white now. So he moves that pawn there. Now I grab this pawn because I've got two attackers, right? And we have f4 now. So black to play and win. There's checkmate here, checkmate in 1. You should find it in a few seconds. Simple thing to do in any of these situations is say, okay, highlight all the squares where the king cannot go, right? Cannot go there or there, or there, or there. Okay, so it can't go his own pieces. So what we've got to do is attack that square, and the move is rook to d3, check and mate. So that must have been a hugely satisfying win for me back 2 years ago against somebody rated over 100 points higher. Just a good, fun game. Lots of interesting tactics in there. I think my opponent played very, very sloppily indeed, but doesn't take away the fact that I won. So I think this again points to one of those key things, is that I really do think that you're better off if you want to improve your chess, and particularly if you want to improve your rating at chess, to pick on slightly stronger opponents than yourself rather than weaker opponents. When you play somebody weaker, you are likely to play in a clumsy and loose, careless, carefree fashion. When you play somebody stronger, you are likely to be on your best game. As in this case, I haven't run the analysis on it, but I'd imagine that his accuracy was very, very low on this. But you know, I'll have walked away with probably 10 points from this game. He'll have lost 6. So yeah, I do have this theory that I probably lose more points playing lower rated players than I do when I play higher rated players on average. That'd be interesting to test, but there you go. Yeah, indeed. Pick on higher rated, slightly stronger opponents if you want to improve. That's the takeaway from this. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe. See you later.